Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my name is Michael and today we'll be learning how to easily model and texture a low poly tree in Maya. This is how it should look like when it's finished. Okay, let's get started. So first thing first, I've created an empty scene. Now we have to make sure that we are on the modeling menu, and if we go to polygons here, let's create a new polygon cylinder, and we can center it by pressing F. On the right side here, if you are on the channel box and layer editor, if we go to poly cylinder 1, which should be, because we only have one in our scene, we have subdivision axis, so let's say 10 axes instead of 20. Now we have a cylinder with far fewer axes. Okay, let's right click it and go to faces, and let's select all the faces except the top ones and delete them. Now let's right click it again and go into object mode, and let's place it here on the ground. Actually, better yet, if we go here on the left side, we can go to this panel layout, and we can see 4 views. This is from the top. This is perspective, so you can move the camera whichever you want. This is front and this is side. So let's go to the front view here. Let's hover with our mouse over it and press space, and that should maximize that view. So now we can actually position this perfectly. There we go. We can also move our pivot point to be here on the center of our new object. Okay, if we go to modify, we can say center pivot, and it will center it on our object. Now what we want to do is create a curve tool, a CV curve tool. So we will go to create curve tool, CV curve tool. Now let's start by placing the first point. Let's place our second point somewhere up here, our third point somewhere up here, and now if we click again and move our mouse button, you can see we can create like a curve. So now I'm pressing left click and hold it. So let's say this is alright for now. Let's create another point here. There you go. It's curved. Let's curve this one as well. And just create a shape that you like. A shape that you think that a branch of a tree could look like. Okay, let's modify it a bit. Let's look to it from the side as well. And now if we right click it and go to control vertices, we can also modify those vertices like this by selecting them, pressing W to see the controls, and now we can move them. We don't want to move that one because it's the one on the ground, so let's choose another one. Okay, let's move that a little bit like that, and this a little bit like this, and maybe this like that. Okay, so now we have a little bit of a curve on the side as well. We can look on the perspective view as well to see how it looks. Okay, very good. Now if we go back to our object here, our cylinder, that actually is not a cylinder anymore, it's just the top faces, we can right click it and go to face, and let's select all the faces and press shift and drag on the curve tool as well. So we'll select that one as well. And now if we go to, well, we have to go to the modeling menu. We should have already been there. Now if we go to edit mesh and press extrude, you can see those faces extruded on the length of the CV curve tool. But because we don't have any subdivisions at the moment, it just goes straight from the start to the end point. So you can see a little box here appeared, and we can say divisions here. We can increase the divisions. Let's increase the divisions until it looks right. Okay, and now let's also twist it a little bit. By the way, if you don't have these options, you can just go up here, press on this little button and select twist. There we go. Now we've created the trunk. Let's modify it a bit, because it's, so we'll say right click and press faces, and we'll start by making some of the faces smaller, so it's a natural progression from big to small up here. Let's select those faces and press R. Now we can modify their scale. So let's just modify their scale like that. Actually, let's only modify the scale on X and Y axis. So we'll use this to make them a little bit smaller. There we go. Okay. Now, if we go and select this panel layout, we can see here the cylinder and the CV curve tool. Let's duplicate this cylinder and delete the old one with the CV curve tool. So now we are left off only with the object. Let's rename it. Let's see, tree main. Okay. Now we can press like Control D to duplicate it, and we'll make branches from this. So let's just make them smaller by pressing R and using the tools to make them smaller. If we press E, we can also rotate it. Let's rotate it and put more of those in there. And we can also modify them again, and the same thing by pressing right click, going to faces or vertices and selecting some of them, and for example rotating them by pressing R. We can do something like this, and let's select those and rotate those, and now we have a more complex branch. Okay, I'll be back in a second after I finished all of them and make something that looks a little bit like a tree. There we go. This is more or less what we've wanted to achieve. So now let's make some of the leaves. We'll use a sphere for that. Okay, let's maybe group all of those together. Let's put them under the tree main by selecting them and then pressing the middle mouse button and dragging them under the tree main. Okay, now we've grouped them. And let's use a sphere. Let's make it bigger. And again, on here on the right side, we can modify the subdivisions. So let's say 10 and 10, maybe even less. Let's try 5 and 5. Does it work? Maybe. Okay, let's try to modify one of those. Go into faces and make weird shapes that may resemble groups of leaves. Okay, let's use this one. Let's use this one for one of the big branches here. Maybe make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Let's move this branch a little bit. Let's rename this to leaves 1. Let's duplicate it and make something smaller, maybe modify it a bit. Same thing. I'll be seeing you in a bit after I place all of those on the branches. Okay, there we go. That's good enough. Let's also put all of those leaves in one group by pressing Ctrl G. Let's call this group leaves. There we go. Now all it's left to do is to do the texturing of the tree. So if we select everything and go to UV automatic, we press on automatic, it's gonna create automatic UVs for us. There you go. After that we can go to UV editor and we can see all of the UVs in here. Since this is a very simple model, we'll just make all of the leaves green, and let's make the trunk a shade of brown. So let's select all of the leaves first, and we can see them up here because we've selected them. Actually, let's do them one by one. So just in case we want to color them differently, let's do each of the leaves separate. So let's select the first one, make it smaller. Nope. And put it in the upper corner. Let's select a second one, make it smaller, place it next to it. And we can check if we place them correctly by selecting the other one as well. Let's get a third one, make it smaller, place it next to it, and so on until I'll get to the last one. What I forgot to say is to be able to add another one without deselecting the other ones, you just have to press Shift and hold it and select another one, and then you can release it and double click on this. As long as you are on face select, it will select the faces of the new one, but it will keep selected the other ones as well, so you can see them on the UV map. We can now go to, in the UV editor window, we can go to polygons and press UV snapshot. And now it's going to show us another window, and it will ask us to save the image somewhere. We can also choose the resolution of the image, which in this case is 1024 by 1024. That's how I chose to save it. Let's save this in here. Let's call it tree UV. There we go. Be sure to save it as a PNG file, and we press OK, and that should save our UV map. Now if we open Photoshop, it should be here. There we go, tree UV. Now you can't see much here, but let's create another layer, and let's make this layer totally black. And now we can see all of the shapes of the of the UV, and we can start painting on them. Okay, so once we've done that, we deselect the layer with the UV lines on it, and let's save this, and let's call it, we'll save it as a PNG, and let's call it, instead of tree UV, let's call it tree texture. There we go. And now we can go back to Maya, and let's select everything and right click it, and let's give it, let's assign it a material. Let's say assign new material, and let's use Lambert in this case. And if we right click it again and go to material attributes, we should see the attributes in here. If we press over here, we have we pop up a menu, and we choose file, and now we can choose a texture file, and let's search for that file that we've just created. which was in images. There we go, texture 3 PNG. Let's say open. And now if we go up here and select this button where it says textured, we should be able to see the texturing on the tree. There we go. Okay, so that's it for the first part of our tutorial. Next time we're gonna do some animation with it. We'll do rigging and then some animations with our tree. So if you like this video, please press like and maybe share. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe. And if you have the possibility, please consider supporting me on Patreon from just $1 a month. Thank you and goodbye.